Let's spend half an hour speaking about the Gender Plus agenda for transforming universities. I prepared this presentation considering that it will be seen also by people who were not involved in the creation of the document. So I will try to integrate more information that I hope will be helpful. First of all, you see that plus in red in the title of the presentation. When we started doing these activities for Compass and Ulysseus, we were speaking about a gender agenda for transforming universities. And to understand this, the reason for this is it's sufficient to remember that we started our project Ulysseus at the same time of the Horizon Europe program. And it was Horizon Europe who introduced new concepts in relation to gender, in particular, the concept of gender plus and the concept of intersectionality. So when the projects were written, when we thought about creating this gender agenda, the Horizon 2020 was not yet introducing these concepts. That are concepts well known in the field of gender studies, of course, but were not officially requested by the Commission. And I will say something about that. The main objectives and aims of the document that has been created through a joint work of the partners was, first of all, to compare the gender equality plans of the partnership. Then it was to learn together how to adopt a gender plus perspective in research. And then, of course, to acquire strategies in order to do that, because we must remember that at the moment, currently, the majority of researchers, even more those in the STEM fields, did not find during their studies a complete, clear explanation on how to adopt this gender or even gender plus perspective in their research and in teaching, of course. So it was important also to give, at least to show some possibilities. So why compare gender equality plans? The idea of comparing gender equality plans raised from the fact that for the first time, as you know, Horizon Europe made it mandatory to have gender equality plans for the organizations. We know there are countries like Spain, like Austria, where gender equality plans may be called in a different way, but the content is the same, were already common. In Italy, we had similar documents mandatory for all universities, not named gender equality plans, but we had those since 2011. But to apply for funding to the EU, it became mandatory for all public organizations to create gender equality plans in a few months, because it was evident that by 2022, the documents should have been there already. In our case, we were lucky because only one of the partners did not have something similar to a gender equality plan or a gender equality plan, as we will see in a few moments. So it was important for us, this idea to compare the gender equality plans. Obviously, we were speaking about gender, and the gender equality plan is the main resource at the moment in universities dealing with this important aspect. So we wanted to know each other, to understand what the others were doing, and to start building an harmonization of those gender equality plans, because we must not forget that students and researchers, professors are traveling across the different universities composing Ulysseus. And our hope is that they will find similar approaches and similar working styles in all the participating universities. Another important reason for which it was important to compare the gender equality plans is due to the fact that immediately after making the gender equality plans mandatory, the European Commission started, at least in some calls, to state very explicitly that the projects must somehow create the content of the research to the gender equality plan of the participating organization. So that was very important, because another important activity in any European university, of course, is that of creating new projects to research for some more funding. So understanding well what was meant with this linking a research project to the gender equality plan was another interesting option to explore. So for these reasons, we started our work with this comparison of the gender equality plans. The second step, adopting a gender plus perspective in research. As I said, it is very uncommon nowadays to have scientists who are fully confident with this idea of adopting a gender perspective. Adopting a gender plus perspective is even more mysterious in many cases. So really, scientists are often puzzled by this request and find it difficult to understand what they are required to do. There is one aspect on which the European Commission has been clear in the last 30, 35 years, that is to create a gender balance in the participants to a project. On that aspect, the majority of the partnership are well equipped. They know what it means. They know that it is not only having a right balance of men and women in the staff working at the project, but they should monitor also the commission, particular commission created within the project, or working groups, or the participants in research activities. So from that point of view, we know that the challenge of the European Union has been won somehow. But for what regards the adoption of the gender perspective, there is still a lot of work to be done. So it was important for us to discuss with the partners and to see what strategies we can suggest to proceed along this path. The third aim, of course, is to acquire strategies. It takes time to learn how to adopt a gender plus perspective. It's not something that can be done in 15 days, in one workshop, in 2 training sessions, because somehow we are required to change our vision of our work. So it is really necessary to follow a path, to think, to read, to exchange ideas and opinions. So we wanted to at least to give some ideas to facilitate people along this path. I will now say something more about these 3 steps. For what regard changing the adopting common strategies for the gender equality plans, I chose 4 examples, although the partners were 6 at the moment, because I think that there are characteristics in each of these JEPs that we analyzed that can be considered examples, or in any case, strategies that can be helpful, or show how things can be different at local time, sometimes independently from what the European Union is asking. So the University of Seville was already running the 3rd equality plan when we started the project, and the dates were 2022-24, so it was clear that when the project started, they had already the 2nd running, and they were working to the 3rd. So this is an example of a university belonging to a country where satisfying the request from the EU was rather easy. Another important aspect related to the University of Seville is this idea that they address also the budget aspect and budgetary aspect. And this is really important and relevant. We know that the Commission is financing specific calls to learn how to adopt also gender budget in universities and in public organizations. And there are several projects running at the moment on this important topic. So we thought it was really important to have the possibility to learn from the University of Seville this important activity. Another aspect very important was that all what the University of Seville was doing was done through a participatory methodology. This again is a very relevant aspect. We know that of course, the top-down strategy is important unless we have rectors, director of departments, president of different commissions sponsoring this gender plus strategy. Nothing can be done. At the same time, if we don't have a bottom-up approach, if we do not involve the people living every day in the university as students, as professors, as researchers, as administrative personnel, gender equality and even more gender plus will still face difficulties. Let's move to the University of Genoa Gender Equality Plan. As I said, in Italy, since 2011, we have documents that are similar to a Gender Equality Plan. So we created a Gender Equality Plan, starting and merging from the documents that we already have and adopting the forms required by the EU. Was very strict in what had to be both the process and the actions, the content of the Gender Equality Plan. However, I'm not here today to speak in detail about that, but to emphasize another important aspect, that is the University of Genoa Gender Equality Plan complies with some of the United Nations 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development Goals. So as you see, it would be easy, of course, to understand that there is a link between a gender equality plan and the Sustainable Development Goal number 5, gender equality. It is not only that, because you see that there are many more other SDGs that are related to the gender equality plan of the university. So I think that this again has been an important step for the partners in order to understand that we should avoid as much as possible to have silos in which we have in one silos gender equality, in the other one diversity and inclusion, in another one the sustainable development goals, in another one the gender budget. It will not work like that. It cannot be like that. So it is important, it has been important also to share this information, these strategies, to again try to harmonize our gender equality plans, to add elements from one JEP to another one, since we are working so strictly together in this project. Other two examples that I think represent interesting aspects are, first of all, the University of Côte d'Azur, our French partner. In France, they really have an impressive number of activities. First of all, they have this unit to counsel and offer support to both staff and students, victims and witnesses of gender-based violence. The strategy that was described by the partners during our exchanges, and you find something in the document, of course, the result of our job is really impressive. So although we all had some strategy in our university, we collectively thought that the French approach was very interesting, and we can all learn about that. And another important aspect was that the university was a part of a national cross-sectional survey to evaluate the different types of discrimination. That again was really very, very important, because it showed how if you move at national level, you can really collect an impressive number of data and have an harmonization, at least in the answers at the national level. So our hope is to do something like that among us, among the partners of this Odysseus University Alliance. And another interesting aspect was that of the action plan for communication without the gender stereotypes. We know that gender stereotypes are still very active, while it is easier for everybody, I hope at least nowadays, to understand what is meant with gender-based violence. Very often gender stereotypes are more subtle, so people tend to underestimate the consequences of adopting stereotypes, of saying some sentences on expecting some reactions or some behaviors. So we thought that this action plan for communication without gender stereotypes was an excellent example to take inspiration from. The last example that I chose is that of Tuke, our Slovakian partner. Was the only partner that did not have a gender equality plan when that document became mandatory according to the European Union. And in that case, I think it is really important to emphasize how the entire group of universities helped our friends from Slovakia in quickly preparing the document in a shared way, involving all the necessary levels at the university, and even some resistance, because of course we can easily understand that if no similar document was already embedded in the university, that has some meaning. So the choice of quickly preparing this document is reflected in this list of topics. Our friends from Slovakia, they chose 9 fields. If you consider that what is mandatory from Horizon Europe in terms of a set of actions is limited to 5 set of actions, it is easy to understand that the necessity of having 9 different fields, different set of actions, reflects the work that has to be done, the importance of changing the situation, of really promoting new and different approaches. For example, they had really to work a lot on data collection, monitoring information, and also securing the resources, the personnel, financial, information related resources. That was important because they were somehow starting from the beginning. Although it is important also to say that this is a university where really oriented toward the STEM disciplines, and then again, once again, in terms of balance of professors, the balance is very good. So this is there are even some departments where the majority of professors are women. Okay. Once we concluded this work, it is important to speak now about the second part of the document, the roadmap. I summarize here some of the recommendations that are well explained in the document. The first and most important for us, if we want to suggest where to start, what to do, is the fact that it is important to refer to the resources recommended by the European Union, in particular the Gender Innovation website, where there is all the information that can help those who are not at the moment still confident with these strategies. The second one is to follow the League of European Research Universities report. There are other leagues, of course. This is not the only one, but in particular, this one is really generous in providing information, strategies, documents that can be useful. So this is simply a first step. Then other leagues of universities can be consulted. We recommend starting with these because the time is limited for all all of us in acquiring new knowledge, so that we consider important to choose, to select the most relevant, most important and urgent documents, website, and so on. Then, of course, it is important to adopt the gender plus approach. So focus certainly on women. The discrimination against women is still strong in universities, but we know that there are other potential grounds for discrimination. We know that people with disabilities, people with different sexual orientation, people belonging to different ethnicity may face discrimination. And in this sense, it is really important to adopt from the beginning this gender plus approach. The last of the four strategies is that related to the adoption of the SAGER guidelines. These guidelines have been developed to help people in writing the articles after doing a research. But there is another important use in doing that, and that is preparing the research, adopting the SAGER guidelines, so as to have results that can be really easy, in an easy way, applicable to gender and not only. This is a document that is, apart from the fact that there is the link in the report, it is really easy to download this document that is freely available on the internet. Other recommendations that we deem important are that of learn about what does it mean to adopt the gender perspective, and learn about strategies, experiences, ideas, research. So there are MOOCs online, like this one, for example, from the Trinity College in Dublin, where there are 3 modules. One is on change management for gender equality, and we know the importance of change management. Because the resistance to change is one of the most frequent reactions when we try to adopt the gender equality plans. The second session is about unconscious bias. That is again another important aspect. And in fact, the gender equality plans must include training on unconscious bias. This is one of the official requirements. And the third is very much connected with our speech of today, the gender dimension in research. Here there are 4 titles of 4 authors. Of course, these authors are speaking about these topics and have been speaking about these topics not only in one book, but in several books. So this again, if you have to read something, you choose something that is as close as possible to your research field, and you can start getting an idea how a different approach can enlighten somehow the research field, adding new perspectives. As conclusions and recommendations, there are new resources and new strategies every day. The number of projects related to gender, to intersectionality, to gender plus is more and more relevant. So there is a lot of information is available at the moment. Whatever the strategy that scientists decide to adopt, this will have to be regularly updated. And we think that 3 main strategies are relevant in this sense. The first one is not underestimate the social media and social networks. In the past, academia was really far from all these new tools for spreading information, exchanging ideas. Nowadays, it is not anymore like that. LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, even TikTok, X are all tools that can be enormously important in being informed about projects related to any topic, in our case, about gender, gender plus, intersectionality. So this is really a quick way to know when a new report is online, when a new conference is announced, when a new book is published. Then it is important to research a financing platform. First of all, Cordis, because of course this is the place where the Commission has a huge archive of the past and current research activities. So it is really easy to find in this database something that is close to our specific research. And if you add as a keyword also gender, sex, men, women, male, female, according to the field, of course, it is almost impossible nowadays not to find at least one, but most probably more projects dealing with those aspects. And these can be excellent starting points for us. The third one is to subscribe to professional associations. There are association for women in artificial intelligence, women in engineering, ICT has a lot of associations where women or diversity related groups are represented. In some countries, this is less common than in other countries. We know that there are differences in Europe in relation to how much we wish to participate to groups that are somehow focusing on one aspect, but these are groups that can give a lot of resources, a lot of strategies. And for those who are not familiar with approaches related to gender in the research field, we really believe that finding one or more professional associations where there is emphasis on gender, on diversity, on inclusion can be really an excellent starting point, because new perspectives, new ideas will be easily integrated in our activities. So as for the previous speaker, you know that the document is already available online. You can download it and you can really get an idea of the information that is contained in this document. And of course, at any time you can contact us with your questions, and we will be more than happy to answer. That's all for me.
Great, thank you so much, Rita. This is excellent. You've done a fantastic overview of what Ulysseus is doing in terms of gender approach. And I would like to point out, it's not just the gender approach to research and innovation per se, it's also all the consequences that derive from that. And I can mention here the consequences on entrepreneurship, the consequences on culture, the consequences on every aspect of social life. And here I'm again speaking from my own experience. As a professor of innovation and entrepreneurship, a significant part of my academic research has been devoted to the gender dimension in innovation and entrepreneurship. I have even written a book on technology and gender, and I've been interested particularly on how the gender bias in academic science is carried over to the academic entrepreneurship, and the difficulties that women face in academic science as an institution are then perpetuated later in their entrepreneurial tech transfer involvement. Here it is. So my main takeaway from your presentation and the main impact that I could point out is the fact that this approach to the gender dimension is now becoming more and more institutionalized, this increasing formalization of the gender awareness. And I think this is a big achievement, because and the European Commission has had a very important impact and action here, because I don't know, like 15, 20 years ago, all these measures were very much at the latitude of the institutions, and some institutions were more advanced, others were less advanced. Whereas now, particularly under the pressure of the European rules in applying for funding, abiding by certain rules, I think this formal dimension of and awareness of the gender bias has been much more advanced. And the other aspect that I would like to highlight is this transformation in the nature of challenges that we see regarding the gender the bias or the gender dimension. 20 years ago, we were probably looking at a certain range of obstacles. Nowadays, we are looking at another range of obstacles. So perhaps you could give us a few more details of your perspective on how these obstacles and challenges have evolved over time, and how do we deal with these new challenges? Of course, you mentioned social media. You know, we live with the instruments of our time, but I mean, it's also a change in our mindset, isn't it? So we are looking at new sets of challenges, but we also have a different set of tools to intervene. So what's your perspective on that? Can you tell us a few more things about this, please?
Well, first of all, I mean, we have been speaking of unconscious bias for ages, but I think that bias is less and less unconscious in the sense that nowadays really thinking or saying that there are no problems in relation to gender shows really a total lack of attention to reality. I mean, whenever the information about this discrimination is spread everywhere, in magazines, in journals, in research, in television, in film, in movies, documentaries. So to keep on fighting against this gender mainstreaming, and not only gender, but diversity mainstreaming shows really the incapacity of looking outside our desk. So in this sense, I think the progression has been enormous, really, really. And also we have a big quantity and quality of support that we can use. There are hundreds of wonderful projects already financed by the EU, not only in Horizon, in the framework programs, but also Erasmus. Erasmus has been always a wonderful platform where to look for examples on what to do, how to do. And the challenges are changing, of course, because diversity is even more important nowadays than gender. Women are not all equal, men are not all equal. What do we mean when we speak about women? It is very difficult nowadays to speak merely about women, because we know the importance of ethnicity, of age, of potential disabilities, on being a man, being a woman, and also this binary focus on the men and women. And nowadays we speak also of people non-binary, or people who choose to describe themselves in different ways. So this diversity is really changing our approaches. That's why I said in my presentation, you must learn some strategy, but then be ready to move on, to change, to acquire new suggestions, to learn even more. The next big challenge, in my opinion, will be intersectionality, because the Commission could have chosen to speak about multiple discrimination. That is a concept that is much easier than intersectionality. Intersectionality is difficult to put in practice in social sciences. Asking people in STEM disciplines to adopt an intersectional perspective is really a big challenge. So I think that is something that we have to monitor and be ready to give support to those willing to move in that direction, because it's not so obvious, it's not so clear. I see that I'm participating to at least 3 conferences in the next few months. In each of them, there is this word intersectionality, and this word was present in the last 2 conferences where I was, but I'm not yet listening about something that is really and concretely addressing intersectionality. What we hear actually is more multiple discrimination, but we know that intersectionality is different, and I think we are not yet there. It will be a big challenge, I think that.